You were the kid everyone said would go far. Top of your class, quick thinker, the one teachers said had so much potential. Your parents told everyone you were going places. And now you're 24, or 26, or 28, and nothing has happened. Not because you're stupid, not because you're lazy, but because something about the way you were built is working against you, and nobody ever explained what it was. This is the psychology behind why the smartest people in the room are often the ones who fall the furthest behind. The first trap is what psychologists call analysis paralysis, and intelligent people are uniquely vulnerable to it. Here's why. When you're smart, you can see every possible path in front of you. You can map out the risks, the variables, the ways things could go wrong. A less analytical person picks a direction and walks. You stand at the crossroads running simulations in your head, and you never move. Robert Greene identified this pattern in his book, Mastery. He studied the lives of history's greatest achievers and found something counterintuitive. He wrote, "Do not envy those who seem to be naturally gifted. It is often a curse, as such types rarely learn the value of diligence and focus, and they pay for this later in life. The gift becomes the cage. When everything came easy to you in school, you never had to develop the one thing that actually determines success: the ability to grind through difficulty when the outcome is uncertain." LinkedIn research found that 75% of people between 25 and 33 have experienced what researchers now call a quarter-life crisis. And the number one trigger? Not financial hardship, not heartbreak. It was the inability to find a career or path they felt passionate about. 61% named it as their primary source of anxiety. You're not lost because you lack options. You're lost because you have too many. And the fear of choosing wrong has become louder than the cost of choosing nothing. The second trap goes deeper, and it's one almost no one talks about. When you grow up being told you're smart, something subtle happens. Your identity fuses with your intellect. Being smart becomes who you are, not just something you can do. And the moment you encounter a situation where intelligence alone isn't enough, a failed relationship, a career that doesn't take off, a business that collapses, it doesn't just feel like a setback. It feels like an identity collapse. Psychologist Carol Dweck at Stanford identified this as the core difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Students who were praised for being smart became afraid of challenges because failure would mean they weren't who they thought they were. Students praised for their effort became resilient because failure was just information, not identity. This is the former gifted child phenomenon that's now being studied across psychology. Kids who were praised for their raw ability and never forced to struggle develop what the Davidson Institute defines as a pattern of chronic exhaustion and burnout, rooted in an educational system they found unchallenging, which left them without the tools to handle real-world resistance. Your 20s are the first time life doesn't grade you on a curve. And if your entire self-worth was built on being the smartest person in the room, the real world will shatter that foundation. The third trap is the deadliest, and it's invisible. Smart people are exceptionally good at one thing that destroys them: rationalizing inaction. They call it waiting for the right time. They call it doing more research. They call it being strategic. But Ecclesiastes, written 3,000 years ago, called it exactly what it is. Whoever watches the wind will never plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will never reap. That's not ancient poetry. That's a clinical description of avoidance behavior dressed in intellectual clothing. Nietzsche said it bluntly. He wrote that genius is not about inborn talent. It's about people who possessed the seriousness to first learn to build the small parts properly before attempting anything great. They took their time. They did the boring work. They weren't paralyzed by the gap between where they were and where they wanted to be. And Viktor Frankl, the man who survived Auschwitz, observed something in the camps that applies directly here. It wasn't the smartest prisoners who survived. It was the ones who had something to live for. A wife, a manuscript, a calling. Purpose beat intelligence every time. Frankl wrote, "It did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us." Your 20s are not about figuring out the perfect plan. They're about answering life's demand with action, not theory. So here's what nobody tells the smart kid. Your intelligence is a tool. It is not your identity. The moment you separate what you can do from who you are, failure stops being a threat and starts being a teacher. Robert Greene laid out the path in mastery. Choose a direction, even an imperfect one. Enter an apprenticeship. Submit to the process. Master the boring fundamentals. Stop trying to skip steps. He wrote that our hunger for magical shortcuts is the very thing that reverses our natural power and turns us into slaves of time. You don't need more information. You don't need another course. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You need to begin. Start small. Start ugly. Start scared. But start. Because the graveyard of potential is full of brilliant people who spent their 20s planning a life they never lived. Your move. If this woke something up in you, subscribe. The next video is going to hit even harder.